What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. The road to predict all 136 FBS level college football teams this summer is again starting to come to a close. We are rounding out today's predictions in Troy, Alabama, where the Troy Trojans are going to hope to start climbing that ladder back towards competing for a Sun Belt championship here in 2025. My name is Nate Pope, otherwise known as Tailgate Nate. Thank you all so much for clicking on the video and, of course, for helping to support the channel. You want to support the channel even further? Go down below, hit the subscribe button, and while you're at it, you might as well ring the bell. Turning on notifications only ensures that you don't miss a single thing I upload, and you're not going to want to once college football finally grazes our eyeballs on that television screen. Now, I am a sports media graduate delving into the professional world of the industry, and if you want to see all the cool stuff I get to do while still being up to date. There you go on what goes on this very YouTube channel. You can give me a follow at TailgateNate29, Twitter, Instagram, and feel free to even email me, tailgatenate29 at gmail.com. I want to thank you all so much for supporting and interacting with not only me, but the channel as well, in whatever way you may be doing so. With all of that said and done and out of the way, it is second-year head man Gerard Parker that is your head coach of this team. Again, took over this program after John Sumrall took the job over at Tulane, and that's worked out really well for him. Did things work out well for Parker last year? Not necessarily. I believe only a 4-8 season and just slow building. However, there were a lot of great things to pick up from this Troy team last year, and you have to take into account there were some pretty major injuries last year, including one very massive one we're going to talk about here pretty shortly. But for all intents and purposes, it seems that 2025, while still considered to be probably another building year for this Troy team, improvement is expected this upcoming season. How do we do preview predictions here on the channel? Well, we are going to go through a roster overview where the offense is here on the left, the defense is here on the right, and at the end of the video, we'll go through the Trojan football schedule. I'll give it a game-by-game preview and prediction, and overall, this video is here to tell all of you what I think about the Trojans here in 2025. Now, before we do get started, you look down below me returning production numbers. They will be according to ESPN, factoring in portal additions only up to a certain very small percentage. And even down below that, recruiting and transfer portal ranks for the class of 2025 are according to 24/7 Sports. Let's kick it off as per usual with your offense and your offensive coordinator, Sean Reagan. When you dive on into the quarterback position, there is a very major thing that we're going to talk about after we tell you who was the primary starting option for this team last year, and it was none other than a guy by the name of Matthew Caldwell. He has since transferred out of the program. He is now, I believe, with Texas, if my memory does serve me correctly. I'll confirm it here. Yep, he is over with Texas to probably be one of the backups behind Arch Manning in that loaded Texas roster. 1,608 yards, 13 touchdowns, 8 interceptions on 63% completion percentage. Okay, he was solid. He wasn't great. He wasn't fantastic. He was okay. But you see this name right up here, and a name that I've told you I like a lot. Goose Crowder is back at quarterback after an injury cut his season short. Now, it was unspecified. I have not read as to what it was. Maybe some Trojan fans can let me know. But again, because his season cut short, he only threw 62 passes last year. However, that being said, 542 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions on almost 70% completion percentage. What's more, 52 rushing yards and did have a rushing touchdown. Now the guy that's going to get outside of the pocket and do it that often can if he has to, and definitely had some situations where he was able to do that last season. This overall is a quarterback in Goose Crowder that I do like the potential of a lot and has waited his turn with this Troy team and really started to emerge last year. Guys, in that 542 yards, he even had a 98-yard touchdown pass. This guy is amazing. And I think Goose Crowder is going to be a really good quarterback, but he has got to be able to stay healthy. If he can do that, though, I really like the leader that is going to be under center for this Troy offense and the guy that's going to be slinging passes, handing off footballs to his skill position room. I think Goose Crowder can be a really, really good player, and I think you're immediately going to see some improvement from this Troy offense as long as Mr. Goose can stay healthy. All right, your top 2 leading rushers from last season. Well, those are going to be names such as 1,000-yard rusher and Damian Taylor. He is transferred off to Ole Miss, and you also are going to be losing Gerald Green out of this backfield as well. Now, there are going to be some transfers that do enter this room. However, the stable is mainly going to feature some fairly sizable returning pieces. Again, it's nothing gigantic, But you still do have some solid talent here. Jordan Levitt, Tay Meadows, Jarris Williams. Those are all returners that are going to be entering this room. And again, yes, there are some transfers. Dennis Palmer, Trey Foley, Jamontez Woods is over. Or no, sorry, Jamontez Woods did come over from West Florida and then re-enter the transfer portal. I do not believe he is with this program. So this is definitely a running back room that's going to have to see some pieces step up, to see some pieces fill in the wings, and so on and so forth. But the usually has had a pretty solid run game. I think the talent they got in this running back is going to suffice, and at very least is going to be good enough to help along this offense. Still think you're going to have a pretty solid rushing game, like you did last season, and especially like you did a couple of seasons ago when Kamani Vidal was your running back. Devontae Ross, as well as many other wide receiver pieces, but none bigger than Mr. Devontae. 1,043 yards and 11 touchdowns for Ross last year on a team high 76 catches, more than doubled anyone else's catching production on the team. The next highest was a guy by the name of Peyton Higgins, who had 31. And he does return to this team. So, leader, say your second leader in catches last year, 301 yards, placed him third. You are also going to be losing a guy by the name of Landon Parker, who is off to the Indianapolis Colts. He is giving life in the NFL a shot. So now to surround Peyton Higgins, well, you are going to get some returning pieces, but it'll mainly be portal pieces, transfers that are really going to step up. From Highland Community College is Darion Bryant. You also do get Christian Tate over from Delaware State. Not mean for that to rhyme. That's just the program he transferred from. Trey Taylor is also a guy that transfers in from Coastal Carolina. He is formerly from Tyler Junior College, so on and so forth. You do get some other pretty solid returners, none bigger than Peyton Higgins, though. And again, those transfers I think are going to play bigger roles than any of your wide receiver returners in this room. When you talk about the tight end unit, your lead tight end target in Brody Dalton is now going to be transferring over to Alabama. 15 catches, 188 yards, and 3 touchdowns for him last year. He's actually second on the team in receiving touchdowns behind Devontae Ross last season, and he is now off with the SEC powerhouse. Last year's number 2, however, Ethan Connor, still some good solid production out of him, 12 catches, 115 yards. Didn't have a touchdown, but I'm sure that's going to change this year. He is now the number 1. And overall, in this wide receiver, there's some really big shoes left to fill. Devontae Ross is transferred over to Penn State. He finally gives the Nittany Lions a downfield threat. And when you take a look and you lose that top tight end that obviously Bama liked enough to say, yeah, come on down. You're going to be really good here with the Crimson Tide. That is a big, big honor. And again, losing those 2 guys among many more pieces that you do lose. Again, even though he didn't have a touchdown reception, Landon was always a very talented piece. You got some really big holes and big shoes to try to fill in for with all these transfers and returners. On the offensive line, hey, it was pretty solid last year. Rushing unit, 4.3 yards per carry, nearly 1,900 yards. Hey, those are good numbers, and only allowed 21 sacks last year, only 3 to when Goose Crowd was at quarterback. Okay, those are some good numbers. You can absolutely build off of that. While you're going to be replacing some pieces, the unit should still be really good this year. And I think this is the Troy team that still, even, or I should say, with in a defensive-minded guy, it is a physically built team. I think the offensive line is going to be physical. It is built well, and I think it's still going to see some success, even with some portal pieces that are transferring in, albeit I think talented on the offensive line. So there's your overall look at the offense. The biggest thing with this Trojan offense this year, Goose Crowder's health. He stays healthy. This is an offense that I think can give a lot of defenses in the Sun Belt very big fits. But Gerard Parker being a defensive-minded guy, Troy as a program still has been built on their defense. It still was when John Summerall was there, and obviously now Tulane being built on their defense as well. There are some things that can get better, but this defense, you can count on it playing physical, you can count on it playing hard, and you can count on it maybe not beating, but trying to match as best as they can the physicality level with their opponents. They're going to be playing some opponents than them that are going to be more physical. Okay, that's fine. But Troy does a really nice job at scheming the defense. And overall, again, last year, it was a pretty solid unit out of the Sun Belt Conference. We'll tell you about the talent here after water break. Because as of course, it's important to stay hydrated. You want to make sure you're drinking your water. So when you do talk about the talent here that is on the defensive side of the ball, you don't really get that many transfers, at least that are going to provide some big time minutes for you this year. So it is going to be a lot of returners. Well, 56% returning production, not too bad. However, some big pieces are gone. Your sack leader in Philip Lee. Last season, 5 sacks for him, 30 tackles, was a top 10 tackler. He is now transferring to Arkansas to join the Hogs, and there are a lot of other pieces that leave this defensive line unit. However, some very notable returners. You're going to be returning Jamal Williams, who was leading tackler among defensive linemen last year. 30 tackles, did have 1 sacks. We did have 1 sack, I should say. Julian Peterson is also going to be coming back. He returns to help lead in the defensive interior. He had 2.5 sacks last year. And even though you do lose Raymond Cutts, who was your leading tackler among defensive linemen last year, you still got some solid guys that can provide good sack production, and a transfer in Elijah Davis from South Carolina that I think is going to give you some really, really good production off the edge. When you take a look at your linebacker, you lose your lead tackler, Brendan Jackson. He is going to be gone. 77 tackles, 2 sacks, 3 defended last year. Cool, but your second lead man does come back. Jordan Stringer is not necessarily going to be even stringing together a linebacker core. You see what I did there? He's got a lot of returning pieces around him, but for Stringer, 76 tackles, match the 2 sacks, to have an interception last season. And for a lot of these other returning pieces, you're going to get Stephen Catledge. Devin Lafayette is sort of that the spear position player. He can play linebacker. He can play safety. I actually have him listed going the wrong way. I actually have him listed down there in the defensive back room, so we'll touch more on him in a second. But even behind Catledge and Stringer, you're going to have TJ Thompson. You're going to have Luke Hodge. The bandit position, Jamal Williams, you can absolutely throw in that category. Eric Shaw, same thing, so on and so forth. I think you got to really, any way you slice it, whether you include the bandit and spear position or whether you don't, this is a team that I think has a really good group of middle defensive players. And I guess I can sum that up by saying the second level of this defense, I think, is still going to be really strong, even though your leading tackler is gone. Few defensive back pieces leave. So that's where a lot of this returning production comes from. Sure, you get some nice pieces on the D line, linebacker, but a lot of your secondary pieces are going to return. Devin Lafayette, again, being one of those. You look at what he did last season. When I can find it, there it is, 51 tackles and a pass defended as the 5th leading tackler on this team last year. And your leading secondary member, and Justin Poe, hopefully I said that last name right, 3rd leading tackler, 67 tackles, 4 passes defended, tied for the team lead with 2 interceptions last season. Now the guy that was tied with him, and LJ Green, is off to Tulane. 6 passes defended, 2 interceptions. You are going to be losing his production. However, there are a lot of other really, really nice pieces that come back. Trent Henry is back to play corner for you. You do get Kalano Levine and David Daniel Sisavana, who is going to be transferring into this one. And of course, Sisavana, should say Sisavan. Apologies, there is no A. But he's a Georgia transfer. You know that Georgia doesn't recruit just anyone to play defense for them. Special teams unit is going to remain intact. Evan Crenshaw remains your punter, while Scott Taylor Renfro is still going to be your kicker this year. That's your special teams report, because kickers are people too. So overall, taking a look, I keep pointing the wrong way, guys. It's flipped for me in real life. So when you take a look over here at the defensive side, again, they're going to play hard. They're going to play physical. They got a lot of nice returning talent, but I think a lot of this team's success is going to hinge on what the offense can do. Obviously, you want your defense to play well, get sack production, get turnovers, play hard. I think Troy is going to do that to the best of their ability and be pretty successful in it. Moose Crowder can stay healthy, and the offense can replace all the pieces that it lost. And the offensive line is as good as it was last year. I think you're going to see Troy as an improved football team this season. Let's now go ahead and take a look at the Troy Trojan football schedule here for 2025. But before we get started, you'll want to look down below me at these odds courtesy of FanDuel. Not me telling you to go place your money. I am no expert on betting. Please do not listen to me. Use your money how you want to use your money. But these numbers do just provide some good context to see how good the odds makers in Vegas think Troy's going to be this year. 5.5 is that over-under win total. That's the biggest thing you got to pay attention to with these group of 5 teams, is that over-under win total. That's not a bad number for Troy. The Vegas odds tell you right there they're going to be hanging right around that bowl eligibility mark. And even if the under hits at 5 wins, still an improvement from a 4 win team last season. And they surprisingly enough, while I think it's easy to see they're going to have long odds to get to the playoffs, they have the seventh best odds to win the conference. And they're in a division that can prove to be pretty top heavy this year. Of course, I say that with when all you people should know, the Sun Belt still does have divisions. As again, you play every team in your division, draw two from the other, so on and so forth. But let's first preview this non-conference slate for Troy before we talk about the conference, because this is a non-conference slate that I'm not gonna lie to all you people, I think is not gonna serve Troy really well this year, and it could overall hurt them if they want to get into the postseason. Now they do win their first game of the year. FCS opponent should be able to get through that first game of the year, get your bearings. Cool. I think you get through that one. Then the problem hits like a brick wall. You got to go on the road and play Clemson, who's going to be one of the best teams in the country this year. Cade Klubnik and Garrett Riley, year 3 of that marriage. Woo, I think it's going to be spectacular to watch. You got some amazing running back talent even after losing Phil Maffa. You got one of the best wide receiver rooms in the entire country after seemingly not having that great of a wide receiver room in some of the past couple of seasons. And to anyone out there that says this Clemson defense has lost their tenacity, their intensity, there is no grit or heart, it's all going to come back this year. Not that it ever left. I'm not one that thinks that, but it's going to be much better statistically than it has been over the past couple of seasons because Tom Allen is that defensive coordinator now. I don't think I need to say anything else. On the road at Clemson, you're going to lose in Death Valley. I also think you lose this game at home to Memphis. Now, look, I know Memphis is replacing a ton of pieces, and sometimes it can be really hard to predict these G5 versus G5 matchups, especially when you're considering a program like Memphis that, albeit returns a lot, and a program like Troy that returns some solid pieces, but it is still trying to build toward a certain direction towards the top. Look, everything's going to be replaced for Memphis this year. Brendan Lewis is in from Colorado to be the new quarterback. Frank Peasant is transferring over from Tennessee to be the new running back this season. He's had some pretty darn seasons with the Blue Raiders. This overall is a Memphis team that is rebuilding everything. The foundation is still set strong. Ryan Silverfield has done a masterful job as the head coach of this program. And while I think a double-digit win season is likely pretty far out, I think they can get close, and I think they're going to be one of the better teams in the year. They lost to Troy. So is this road game against Buffalo. Now you might be saying, Buffalo, we can beat Buffalo. Surely we can. And while I think that's true, I think Buffalo's more talented than you. Plus, they get an upgrade at the quarterback position with Taquan Finn. LJ Henderson back at running back, Victor Snow back at wide receiver, some really good defensive pieces for what could be one of the better defensive sides in the mid conference, and a team and a program that is building in the right direction and can be that Mid American Conference sleeper. Everyone's going to talk about Ohio, Miami, Ohio, Toledo, so on and so forth. Watch out for the Bulls this year. Buffalo can be really good, and I think they get this non conference win against the Trojans. So now we can dive in and start talking about conference play. Again, you play one in your division, and these are the two teams they're getting across the other side, Old Dominion and Georgia State. We'll talk about those games when we get there. So overall, you take a look, and again, this Troy team is going to play really hard defensively, and I think that there are going to be some games and some of the top level of competition within this division that you are going to be able to win. And look, South Alabama, Texas State, Arkansas State, Louisiana. Those are probably going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 in the Sun Belt. I believe it's the Sun Belt West. I'll fact check myself here, but they're going to be the top teams in that conference, or I say in that division. Yes, it is the Sun Belt West. But Troy can make things interesting, and they can compete with some of the top talent. That includes South Alabama, who is losing Gio Lopez, and you have some questions about exactly how Zach Pyron's starting role as a quarterback is going to go. He's never been in the full-time starting role before, at least long-term. Kentrell Bullock is a good returning running back piece. Devin Boyson, when he's on, is a really good wide receiver piece. Defensively, you got a lot of nice returning talent, especially Blaine Myrick, who returns up the middle in the linebacking unit. But again, this Troy team is going to play hard, and I think they pull out a couple of games that, maybe you're looking at and saying, well, the other team should beat them. I think this is one of those cases. I think South Alabama is going to falter somewhere early as they get into conference play. And I think Troy's the perfect opponent to do it. You play hard and physical on defense, you force some turnovers and some mistakes out of the South Alabama offense. Suddenly you're in business. I think that's what Troy's going to do. However, their luck is going to run out against the top end teams, at least for now, when you go on the road to play Texas State. Again, Texas State, South Alabama, you can compare the two. I think they're going to be pretty similar talent wise. Was really high on the Bobcat team last year, not as high on them this year, but I think they're going to improve. Nate Yarnell, Holden Gariner, as you have no Giovanni McCoy. He is transferred over to another program where he is in hopes to start. It was going to be Texas State. It is now not Texas State. So Nate Yarnell probably going to take over, even though you lose Ismail Mahdi. I think Lincoln Pear is a really good running back. You pair some really nice portal pieces with Chris Dawn in the wide receiver room. And defensively, I think you're going to see a step forward this season. Texas State very well could be a team we see in the Sun Belt Conference Championship, much like South Alabama. Only difference is you win the one at home, you lose the one on the road. I think you win this one on the road against ULM as well. ULM will, I think, can see some improvement this year. I mean, just overall, it does not impress me that much from a talent standpoint. They did not get many, if really any notable transfers into that program. They're going to have to build with what they got. And now they have the issue of Brian Vincent now becoming an interim AD while potentially still being the head football coach. There's a lot of complications to go on with ULM right now. I think that's a win for the Trojans. So two of those teams I said earlier that can finish atop the Sun Belt West Division are right here, Louisiana and Arkansas State. Now, the good news is you get them both at home. However, I think you split these two games, and I'm going to predict it in the more likely sense. I think you drop this one to Louisiana because out of any team in the Sun Belt Conference, Louisiana is probably the team I look at and say, you're going to make it boom. And that's even coming from a team that I believe won Conference USA last year. So that is not Conference USA, won the Sun Belt. I don't know where my head was going. That won the Sun Belt last year. Now, Howard Walker is going to be stepping into a full-time role, again, like Zach Pyron at South Alabama. Don't really know what that looks like because he's never done it before. However, he's got a lot of talent surrounding him. The defense is going to play hard. Michael DeSormo is one of the better head coaches in the conference, and Louisiana is primed and ready to get back into the Sun Belt championship game. But I told you they'd split these two games, and they're beating Arkansas State because I worry about this Red Wolf defense. I do not think that this defense, I can't say I don't think. I know that this defense was not that great last year. And even though I think it's going to make some improvements, I don't think that it's quite up to the standard that it needs to be at. Now, Arkansas State was very successful. They won quite a few football games last year. Okay, they're going to do it again this year. They have Jalen Rayner, Jaquez Cross, some really dangerous wide receiver pieces. But the defense, when Goose Crowder is healthy, I think this is the Troy offense that can exploit some weaker defenses, of which Arkansas State is going to be one of them this year. And that is the reason why I have Troy winning that game against Arkansas State, on top of the fact that their defense should be able to do enough to slow down this Red Wolf attack. On the road against Old Dominion, hey, people are sleeping on the Monarchs this year, man. Do not sleep on this team. Old Dominion is really going to be pretty dangerous. I do like this Old Dominion team quite a bit. I think they're really, really good, talented pieces. They bring in some really nice portal additions in return to what they already have coming back. It's a team that made some excellent strides last year. And I do believe that it's going to make another stride this year. I got them in a bowl game, and I think Old Dominion's going to be pretty solid this season. Troy loses that one on the road. However, you got two very winnable games in order to get into the postseason. I think you beat Georgia State. Full transparency, I just think they're going to be the worst team in the conference this year. I really don't think they're going to be that competitive. And overall, not that great of a football team this season. So I do think you beat Georgia State. And even though Southern Miss is winnable for you, I do think you drop this one. Southern Miss is definitely a team that, again, Troy can definitely beat. I'm not discounting that at all. Troy can beat this team. They were towards, if not at the bottom of college football last year and just lacked a whole lot of substance. Well, they're getting a lot of nice portal pieces in. Charles Huff is coming over from Marshall to be that head coach. And I think a lot of those things are immediately going to see some improvement here with this program. And there's going to be some moments of inconsistency for Troy this season, I do believe, on top of the fact Southern Miss improves. And hey, chaos can happen in the G5 too. Troy loses that one on the road. So they fall just short of getting into a bowl game. However, they can do it. Now, again, I've had it come at a price where they're winning two really big important games at home against South Alabama and Arkansas State. Maybe you can swap one of those two, like the South Alabama one, with a win at home against Memphis. If Memphis really is reeling from everything they lose, maybe Buffalo's not going to be as good as people say. You can easily beat Southern Miss. Maybe Old Dominion's not as good, so on and so forth. I do think overall it's going to be a really interesting season to watch for the Trojans. A step in the right direction. Yes, you go 500 in conference. That's not too bad at all. But if everything works together, I think this is the Trojan team you absolutely can see bowling this year. That's going to do it from this video. Let me know your thoughts on the Trojans in the comment section below. And remember to play hard but tailgate harder. I'll see all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.